There we go, must be on. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brother Kelly Hughes Chaplain of the Arts. We are broadcasting live from the Valiant Theatre, right in front of the confessional. I'm here with Greg Crowe. I wanted to do it in the confessional, but I didn't think that you'd want to kneel for like the whole time.
Or confess my sins live. That's that too.
Anyway, thanks for coming down. We had a little miscommunication. I didn't tell Greg that we were actually doing it here. You said you're 22 minutes away.
Yeah.
Where do you live? 22 minutes away on
I live in
Sunday.
southeast Winnipeg, and I'll jump in my car right now. I'll be on my way. So sorry for being late.
So I've got Greg Crowe, who is sometimes known as Greg Milka Crowe, sometimes just known as Mr. Crowe, sir. And thanks so much for coming by. You have been making music for a long time.
Yeah.
And you just said you're turning 50.
Yes.
Soon. Which
yeah.
is,
In a couple of months, I'll be 50.
Yeah. Which seems like, you know, do you ever look in the mirror and just think like there must be some kind of clerical error? There must be, you know.
Everything's speeding up. I can't slow it down. So yeah, and my body keeps telling me like, yes, the years are clicking by. You know, between my knees and my feet and lack of sleep and.
What's wrong with your feet?
Oh, I think I damaged them running, which wasn't a problem when I was, you know, in my 30s. But now, when something hurts, it doesn't bounce back. So
no, that's right. You don't. It doesn't. You don't. Something doesn't hurt, and you don't get another thing, and then that other first thing goes away. It just adds on.
Yes, exactly. It's like, well, add this to the list of things I have to take care of.
It's all cumulative. When did you? Now you have been. You teach music.
That's right.
But you have been playing music for a long time, and you've been in a bunch of bands. I think some people probably still remember you as a young, bleach blonde, punk ass kid.
Yeah.
And then you know, other people just know you as kind of the you know, the grand old man of ska, and some people just know you as a teacher. But when did you start making music?
As early as I can remember, you know, probably like 6 years old.
Yeah.
And then making a conscious decision to form a band and play with other people was probably, I would say, grade 10. So I was 15 years old. Yeah.
So like 35 years ago.
Yeah. Yes. It's a long time.
You still talk to any of those guys?
Absolutely. Yeah. Some of them on the daily too. So yeah. Because once you make music with people like that, you know, bonds are formed, and you know, they become precious to you. So they become your brothers and sisters for sure.
Remind people about some of the bands you played with.
Yeah, I guess the very first band I played with was a group called Chop Logic when I was again just 15 years old. So that was a punk rock band I played with, and then when I just after I had turned 18, I formed a band called Whole Lotta Milka with some friends of mine from high school, and that was a really fun ride. That was given a 7-year stretch, which was pretty incredible for, you know, an independent band to have that kind of a lifespan. Following that, I played briefly with a band called the Racketeers, and then I formed a band out of the ashes of Whole Lotta Milka called the Wedgwoods. And then I started doing a solo thing, and I had a friend of mine, Ian, who said, you should put like a little wee band around that solo thing, which became the Greg Milka Crowe Band, and that eventually evolved into, we changed the name of that group to the Scarlet Union.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, when you were doing that, when you were younger, you were touring and playing out all over the place and whatever. Did you think that's what you were going to do? Did you think you were going to do that forever, or did you feel like it had a kind of a shelf life for that kind of, you know, getting after it kind of part of that, or what?
Yeah, I had a romanticized notion that this could be a thing if it kind of crosses the Rubicon, so to speak, right? But as soon as I left high school, I started studying music at university, and always had my eyes set on being a music educator.
Yeah.
And that could happen right after I'm done university, or when the time presents itself. So I think it was about a year before I graduated from university. There was an incident that happened that said to me, this is very apparent that if I'm not willing to make a humongous sacrifice, this isn't going to be a forever kind of thing.
Can you tell us what the incident is?
Yeah, we got a phone call from a tour management company in Toronto, and they said, we want you to go on tour with this band, and they were very big at the time, so it was a huge opportunity for us, and they said, you leave in 2 weeks. I was like, oh my God, 2 weeks, how are we going to put that together? Because the band had 8 people in it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I started calling the guys, like, can you get 2 weeks off work in 2 weeks? So like, Crow, that's pretty much impossible.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is a big opportunity for us, so maybe we'll call in some subs and whatnot. I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, am I going to go on the road with half a whole lot of milk? You know,
Yeah.
the half pints? Like, I'm not going to do that.
Half a lot of milk, though, yeah.
Yeah, half a lot. So I didn't like the way that was going, so I called the agent back and I said, look, we can't do it on this short of notice,
Yeah.
but please keep us in mind. We're not turning down this opportunity. I want you to know we worked really hard to make it happen. But next time, could you give us like 6 months notice? And he laughed. He said, that's
Yeah.
not how this works. You have,
And
so
you-
I should just be unemployed, sitting in my van, waiting for the phone to ring? He said, yes. Like, well,
And you never heard from him again.
never heard from
Yeah.
him again.
But I mean, I guess the people that are doing that kind of stuff, you know, still, you know, into their 30s and 40s and whatever, I mean, then you end up like, you'll have to do something like being a server or something where, you know, you can just get the time off, you know, if you have a boss who can, you know, who say sure, but I mean, you can't really have a kind of a regular kind of a job that you can't just bail on, because that's, you know,
I
doesn't
think
work like that.
I think that's how a lot of bands do it. There was a band from Washington, D.C. that we played with called the Pie Tasters.
Yeah,
And to us, you know, they had released, you know, many, many albums. They were a big band, and when they came through town and we had the chance to hang out with them a little bit, their whole plan was to get home after tour, sober up, and find work. And then when it came time to go back on the road again, they all just quit their jobs. Like that was the life they led, according, you know, to what they were telling us. So that's a big sacrifice. You got to be really willing to suffer if you're going to do that.
and all those people would have just died during COVID.
Yes.
Yeah. The reason that I wanted to sit down and do this, normally I would do this on my radio show, but I'm not. I've retired from my radio show at the moment, and so we're sitting here on Facebook Live, although you may be watching this later because I'm going to put this elsewhere. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because you wrote something last year now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just tell us what you did.
Yeah. Well, years ago at Aqua Books, you had me in as songwriter in residence.
Yeah, it was like 20. It was like 2010 or something. It was a long time.
It was a long time
Yeah,
ago, yeah. And I was honored that you had asked me, but I had always felt really bad about it, Kelly. And I know I've apologized to you before, but I was kind of at a crux in my life where me as a singer-songwriter and a guy who plays in a band was just slowly leaving my life.
Yeah.
And there were other things that I was wanting to focus on. It wasn't really a conscious decision, though. It was just kind of organically happening where I wanted to be around my family more. I wanted to focus more on my teaching career.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't writing as many songs. And, you know, I don't know how many songs I wrote during my time as songwriter in residence, but I felt like I didn't make as much of that opportunity as I would have liked. And I felt bad because I felt like I had made a commitment to you and Aqua Books. And I know we did that workshop or whatnot, but I always wanted to do something concrete outside of saying, like, Kelly, I'm sorry about that, you know? So right now I'm doing my master's study, Superandon University, in composition. And I thought, you know what, I would like to write a piece of music that would be accessible for young musicians, say like from grades 8 through 12, and professional groups can play it too if they want, but it was kind of accessible to everybody. And I thought, this is my chance to use my craft and give back to the community, and I believe in what you're doing here. So I wrote a chart for jazz band called The Valiant Shall Rise, and offered it up to folks to say, pay whatever you want. If you make a donation to Kelly's cause here, then I will send you the chart. You can pay whatever you want for it. So that was the idea.
If we were more organized, we'd have you play it, but I have nothing here but a broken novelty harp.
One day it's going to happen. I envision a jazz band up there playing that tune, and it's going to be wonderful when it takes place.
No, I mean, so I wanted to talk about this, but I wanted to talk about it was, you know, you had you messaged me the other day and said, oh, somebody bought one because you can buy it and they use it, for their students and whatever. But it made me think about it again, and it made me think about our slogan here, wearing the shirt. Shirts are available. Art will save us all, and I just keep feeling like the news is so bad. Like, the news is just so fucking bad. The world is so depressing. And, it's not just what's happening in, down south. I mean, they finally searched the landfills and, and I mean, just, there's so much to be depressed about, and I'm not trying to be a downer, but I feel like this is the reason why the slogan for what we want to do here with the Valiant is art will save us all, because I feel like all the other stuff, like, to me, like, I don't know, politics, money, business, whatever, all this other stuff is a dead end, it seems to me, and it seems like really the only thing that can sustain us when things are really bad is art, whatever that is, art, the big picture art. And now you're working with, what age do you work with?
High school students, so 15 through 18.
So, I mean, you still remember, we just talked about you being a 15-year-old music nerd. Like, what do you want to do for those kids? What do you want to leave them with? What do you want them to get out of what you're doing with them?
I think our purpose for being here, whether it be within the realm of arts or otherwise, is to serve others. Like, that's why we're here. And I think art gives us a wonderful chance, an opportunity, an outlet to do that. So I'll talk to my students about what's happening within this piece of music that we're creating. How are we trying to serve one another?
Yeah.
How do we serve the composer's intentions? How do we serve our audience? How do we serve our own souls? How do we make the world a better place with this piece of music? And you can transfer that music over to theater, over to filmmaking. My wife is a ceramicist, so what is she doing on her pottery wheel to serve the world? I really think about things in terms like that, and I think art gives us a wonderful opportunity to make that happen.
Have you always kind of had that idea about serving the world, contributing, making things better? Has that always been in your head, or did you have an epiphany, or what? Where does that come from?
It's evolved over time. It didn't start out that way for sure, but I think I went through a difficult time in my life. When I was 30, it was more like 28. Yeah. And, I was really down in the dumps, and went from finding things that were very stable to being very unstable. And I was like sleeping on a mattress in my parents' basement again, like all of a sudden, and I corrected it. It was all fine, but
yes, he's not still sleeping in the basement.
Yeah, that's right. So, but thankfully, but yeah, I had some friends who were in much better positions who were saying, like, maybe read this or check this out. And I was given a book by Wayne Dyer, and in his book he talked a lot about service. And he said, when you wake up in the morning, you should perhaps be asking yourself, how can I serve? Yeah. And I found, like, removing me from the center and putting others at the center actually helped me to feel a hell of a lot better. And then it perpetuates too. I feel like other folks will hopefully see that, and they will want to perpetuate those ideas.
For those of you who don't know, Wayne Dyer is super old school self-help. That's like, we used to have, copy of, what was the book? Your Erroneous Zones?
Yeah, Your Erroneous Zones, yeah.
Knocking around from, we're talking like late 70s. He's probably still around, I don't know.
Is Wayne still around?
I don't know.
He passed away a few years ago. Yeah.
He's not around.
Yeah.
He's not around. He's not sleeping in anybody's basement.
No.
That just is interesting to me because I feel the same way about what's the point unless you're contributing, unless you're helping other people, unless you're one of the other things I talk about is just taking your corner of the world and making it better, right? Like, you can't people get very frustrated about all this kind of big picture stuff, and you look at it, and if you follow the news, and I have to admit, I'm a little bit of a news addict, and I follow it kind of, you know, maybe too much, because it's all depressing, and there's nothing I can do about it. But I feel like you know, really, you should take your little piece of it, because that's the thing that you can do, right?
Yeah,
You can
100%.
affect you can affect the people around you. You can affect your community, and of course that's how. Who was it? I feel like it was Pete Seeger on his like 90th birthday. They were having this big birthday for him, and he said, it's a few years ago, and he said, I normally don't like big things because I feel like the world's only going to be changed by little things. Lots and lots of little things. I'm paraphrasing badly, but, and, you know, because we always kind of think, you know, oh, you know, this is happening, who's going to save us? You know, who's going to save us from Trump, or who's going to do this or that or whatever? And when really, I mean, we need to, I kind of, I don't, did you see Mike Myers on Saturday?
I did, yes.
Yeah, so I don't actually, I've never really found Mike Myers that funny, but yesterday on Saturday Night Live, he did his little bit, and he shows up and he's got his shirt on that says Canada's not for sale,
Yeah.
and then he looks at the camera and he goes, elbows up, you know, which is like the hockey thing, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like and I kind of like the idea of elbows up, because it's like saying, you know, okay, now it's your turn, what are you gonna do? And, you know, I feel like whoever we are and wherever we are and whatever our situation is, we can do something, right? It's not going to be the same thing, but it's something. And it feels really important for me to do that. And you know, and I guess, you know, other people like sports and stuff like that. But to me, like I was kind of a theater nerd kid in high school, and I was pretty, for various reasons, I was kind of, I didn't really feel like I fit in, and I would be kind of invisible all year, and then in the spring, or whatever, when we were doing the show, I'd show up and, you know, there I am on stage, you know, in the heart of little old New York, you'll find a thoroughfare, and then people are like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
But, you know, it was like that time when I felt like I felt like I was doing something, that I was part of a group and we were all doing this thing, and it, you know, that feeling of kind of, I've only been in a band as, you know, as an adult, kind of a dad band thing, but when you're that age, and when you're part of that kind of team, and like, you know, like you would have been with your bands and stuff early on, like, there's nothing like that feeling, you know, of really like, when everybody's working towards the same thing. So do you see now, what do you see your students and the young people that you work with, what do you see them doing that makes you feel encouraged?
I hope that what they learn by creating art, by creating music, that they understand that that's only the vehicle.
Yeah.
That what we're really trying to do here is teach them how to be human beings, to find their humanness.
Yeah.
And I will, you know, sometimes I will have students, and sometimes parents of the students say to me, well, my child isn't going to go into the arts or music after high school, but I know that what they've learned here is going to serve them well. And if you can figure that out, I think that you will be a strong contributor to society. That what you do on stage in theater class, that what you learn from being in an improv troupe, or singing in a choir, or playing in a band, or being in an art class and understanding what you do on an easel or with your clay, is something that you can transfer over to any other field and help to contribute to the world.
Now, nobody wants to talk about COVID anymore because it's, you know, passé and whatever, but I've been reading a little bit lately about, just in kind of my reading about politics and various things like that, there was a study that suggested that isolation leads people to be more conservative, which was an interesting thing. But then also I was listening to a podcast talking specifically about an American podcast about how people being isolated during the pandemic kind of sort of very specifically moved them in a very specific kind of a political way, and talking about sort of isolation and loneliness and all these things, and about how that doesn't make us better. I mean, that obviously would have been a difficult time, like trying to teach through that time with all the stops and starts and whatever. Do you see how that kind of affected your students?
It was very strange time for me, as it was for all of us, but I had just moved to a brand new school, and anytime you move into a new school with an established program, you're filling somebody's shoes, things are awkward, you're just trying to find your footing, and then all of a sudden you get COVID, so everything was doubly, triply weird. I thought about it really hard. What am I going to do with this? And the answer was super clear to me. I'm going to work with the students. And I went back to them the following day after we were told, you have to put your instruments away, this is what it's going to look like now. Hey folks, what do you want to do? We kind of have a blank slate here. We can do anything we want. Let's brainstorm and come up with some ideas. So kids said, well, we don't need wind instruments to form a rock band. We got percussion ensembles. Maybe we could get some string instruments in here. And so we bandied about some ideas and figured it out collectively, which I think is a great small example of how things maybe should be worked out in the bigger picture out in the real world too.
Well, and they must have had a lot of ownership over that, because they felt like they were creating the curriculum and the environment.
I thought so. And for example, they said, how about we try guitars for a few months? And then they didn't like it. For some of them did, but a lot of them was like, can we go back to playing like cello? Because I prefer that so much better. Yes, yeah, why don't we switch it up, right? So we had the flexibility to do almost whatever we wanted. And like, what's going to make us happy? What art can we create here that's going to make us feel a little bit better? So I do this year-end reflection with the students. At the end of the year, they have to do this one written assignment where they have to answer questions that are around how has music made you a stronger person? How do you see the world differently because of music? The questions are so unrelated to music. And the answers I get so often are not music related, which warms my heart. So I found the band room to be a safe place for me to be. I felt like I have so many more friends because of music. I feel like I view the world differently because they're not talking about the actual music they made. And when they understand that art is the vehicle to get you to a different place as a human being, I feel like, okay, I think there were lessons that were learned here that were valuable for the real world.
And do you think, I mean, because that builds, you're talking about sort of creating helping them to become people, helping them become human beings, and I think it must go a long way towards building empathy and those kind of things that we would really kind of like to see more of, because it seems to me like a lot of the way that we've set up the world is around making money, which is not. I mean, the people that are good at making money are not necessarily the people that are good at being people. Pick your top 10 richest people, and then, okay. And I mean, most of the best people I know can't figure out how to, rub two nickels together, because that's not what they're good at. And I wish that somehow we had the world set up in a way where you could just survive and live doing the positive things that one does, the community work or the whatever, that somehow you wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to kind of figure out how to monetize that, you know what I mean? That somehow
I do.
we would kind of value that and whatever. I know that's kind of another, that's a big thing, but I do, you know, some of the best people that I know are, have just always kind of struggled in that sort of way, and I, you know, most of the people I know, are not rich, but every once in a while, like I move people, and I do jobs, and I move stuff for people,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I got my truck, and sometimes I'll go somewhere, and I'll be at like some $1 million house. I was at some house, like, guy owned some limo company, and he actually, I've never been to a place where there was actually a gate, where you actually had to buzz in.
Yeah.
He had the gate, it was in East St. Paul or West St. Paul or something, and there was like, the driveway was like as big as this room. I guess you could turn a limo around, you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
was, and this big giant house, and this big huge painting of his family and the grandparents, giant thing on the wall, and everything was tacky, and you know, all this, like, just so expensive. And I looked at this guy, and he was younger, you know, I don't know how old he was, younger than me, but I remember thinking, like, I don't know what drives a person to want this. You know what I mean? Like, what?
I do.
To me, I don't understand what is the kind of, what happens in your brain when you're like, this is where I want to get to, you know? Because there's lots of things that I want to do, but none of them have to do with having a big, giant, white $5,000 couch, right? Like, and so I think, you know, what you're talking about, what you're doing with your students is very valuable, I think, to me, because I think we need more better human beings.
Yeah.
And you know, I actually, after high school, I thought, well, I want to be an actor, but I can't really be an actor, so I'm going to go to school. Well, I had a friend who was a year older than me. She was studying to be a teacher. I'll be a drama teacher.
Yeah.
So I went into B.Ed at U of W, and I had this class the first week, and the professor gave this. It was just like, you know, like, I don't know, whatever your like intro to ed, like your first kind of education class you have, and he gave this kind of big kind of spiel, and he said, you know, this is a very serious thing, and I want you to, if you're not going to commit to teaching for 10 years, I want you to quit by the end of the year, by the end of the semester, whatever. He had some big thing.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there, and I remember, like, as he was talking about it, I thought, oh my God, he's right. I don't want to do this. And by the end of the week, I had transferred just to arts, because I thought, well, I don't want to teach. So I mean, I never ended up doing that. But you know, when I had Aqua Books, I mean, one of the things that I really kind of liked was giving young people a venue, a space, giving them an opportunity to do something, because it seemed like it felt important, you know. So lots of, you know, people like, do you know Nick Dyson?
Yeah. Hi, Nick.
Hey,
I'm
Nick.
sure he's
Yeah,
watching.
right, Nick.
Yeah.
Nick. So Nick's sick of me talking about him. I talk about Nick all the fucking time. But Nick, I gave him a very, very, very early gig. I think he maybe played at, you know, Carmen Chicken Days or something, you know.
Yeah.
But a very, very early gig, and he was 17. He wasn't even old enough to have a drink in there, and did this little show, and there were like 12 people there, but it was like, at the end of it, like, they gave him a standing ovation. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they were just, and it was his friends and stuff, but he just, like, Nick, because he just bleeds out on the stage, you
Yeah.
know, and he just gave everything, and I mean, they loved it, and like, to me, like, I still remember that, you know what I mean? I still remember seeing him sitting up there, and my memory's not good. There's lots of things I don't remember, but I remember that because it was significant, you know. And he's
Yeah.
of course gone on to do all kinds of things, and of course he teaches and.
Hey, he subs for me all the time.
Yeah.
Like, he's my guy. Yeah.
And so, you know, and then of course we did lots of stuff with the now disgraced U of M Jazz Studies program. But you know, we did lots of stuff with them, and there were lots of people that I gave very early gigs too. I mean, there were lots of people that were like, you know, that were, you know, 19 or 20, and you know, they wanted to do something, and I said, sure, let's do it. You know, and people that have, you know, been going on to do all kind of, like Jocelyn Gould is just traveling all over the place, and Aaron Shore and all kinds of other people. Curtis Nosad, of course. I mean, I'm not going to say I gave him an early gig because he was playing in the Cambridge when he was 15, but you know, or even people that haven't gone on to do things as far as I can tell. There was a guy who wanted to do one of the jazz kids who wanted to do a Disney. He wanted to rearrange a bunch of Disney songs for jazz, and I said, sure, okay. So, you know, did this thing, and there were 20 people there, and I lost money, I'm sure, because I gave them all the money from the door, and I had to pay my bartender, and nobody drank because everybody was, you know, 19, and you know, but they that's again another thing that I remember because they loved it. You know, everybody, they had fun, and it was, you know, I mean the work that they put into, you know, he rearranged all this stuff, and they had, you know, a million, you know, practices and whatever, but you know, what a great thing. And I mean, there aren't really, and this is why we want to do this place, the Valiant Theatre, is because, you know, there are places to play, but there aren't really that many places for something like that to happen. For somebody to say, yeah, sure, come do your thing that's not going to make me any money. I'll open the doors, and you come use my stuff, and you do this thing that's, you know, that has no benefit to me. Because to me, it did have a benefit. To me, it was, it felt important to do, and it's. I guess I do kind of think of it this way, but you know, when you said it at the start of this chat, when you said, you know, like serving other people. That really, I've just been sitting here thinking about like that. I just think like, yeah, I mean, you know, what a great and kind of underrated thing to do, right? I think, you know, we don't really kind of, I don't know, we don't really celebrate those people enough that are doing that kind of thing, and that's not why you're doing it. But I just mean we don't seem to hold that in very high regard in our culture. You know, the people that are kind of that are just trying to facilitate the things that other people are doing. And I asked you where it came from because I grew up in like the hardcore evangelical church, and serving is a thing that's always talked about. I didn't see it as much as, you know. I didn't actually see it as much as you know, kind of want, but you know, that is a thing that certainly is, you know, talked about in religion and talked about in the Bible and whatever, and kind of a.
I think in the Western world, we think of service as, you know, kissing the ring almost, you know, like.
Or the people that are serving are at the bottom of the.
Right, exactly, and I think I was sucked into that idea, like at one point in time in my life. But I think an active service is really punk rock in a lot of ways, right? And if I walk out into the street, and I don't always get it right, I'll just be very clear about that, but if I can operate with the consciousness and the mindset of how can I be of service in this moment right now, and if that's to another person, if that's to the environment in which I'm in, whatever it may be, but if I can maintain that consciousness, and like I said, I always get it right, and everybody else had that kind of consciousness, what would the world look like? Really,
it's hard to imagine.
I'm here to serve you right now,
yeah.
And like when I leave here and I go home, how am I going to serve my family? And what happens in between there, right? How can I best be of service? And it's not like you're giving yourself up. It's actually a contribution into the world.
Yeah.
So.
And if everybody was doing that, then it's not like you're getting bled dry, because if everybody's doing that, then people are doing stuff for you. It's
quite the opposite, actually. It fills my bucket when I get it right. You know, when I feel like, yeah, I think I'm on today. I think I've got my consciousness is locked into place where I'm doing things that I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I'm pretty agnostic these days about any kind of religion, but I do feel like, you know, karma feels a bit real to me. You know, the karma of like, here and now. Like,
Yeah.
like you, of course, not everybody, I mean, lots of people have hard times and things that they can't do anything about, but I mean, very often, what you're putting out there is what you're getting back. Because, you know, people, and this is, I think,
If I can interrupt you,
Yeah.
I think an important part of that too is, yes, send it out into the world, but don't expect anything.
yeah,
Like, do it just for the sake of doing it, and not like, okay, well, I've got X number of karma points now.
yeah,
You know, and I do believe that there's a difference between spirituality and religion,
yeah.
and that you can be agnostic or even atheistic and still have this spiritual side that says, I do care about that other human being sitting across from me. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, this is good. I was just gonna babble on about something, but I think that this is that's a great point, because I mean, that's how, you know, we're doing this thing in this old church, and to me, you know, I feel like the stage is here is the sacred altar of art, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like, really, I mean, because this is the thing, like, when I was involved in this kind of, I don't know, hyper-organized religion, I don't know what we want to call it, but there was also that kind of team feeling where, you know, people are kind of doing the same thing, they're kind of on the same page, and there's kind of, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, people like it. People want to be on a team, you know, and lots of the people I know are kind of maybe what I'd call, you know, post-religion, and I think that is a thing, again, just going back to what I was talking about with sort of loneliness and isolation. I feel like that is a thing in our culture that we're missing, you know, and one of the big, this is, you know, recording this on Facebook, this is one of the big platforms I use, and people are pissed off with Mark Zuckerberg and whatever, rightly so, and so people are, you know, I don't know if people are fleeing the platform, but lots of people are saying, you know, I'm not going to do this anymore or whatever, and I've kind of been like, well, that's a bummer for me, because this is how I get my kind of word out. But then I thought, well, you know, the solution to, you know, not trying to enrich the oligarchs is, and this is why, like I told you before we started, like, I've got to get this damn place open, because, you know, for people to actually be out in the world together, and for people to actually be, you know, in this room and experiencing this same thing, and kind of, I heard another interesting thing years ago on, I think it was CBC Radio, about how they've actually, you know, hooked up whatever they do, brain monitors or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what. This is the science is a bit sketchy here, but you know, while people are creating music together, you know, like back in the day, and I know this because I've moved literally hundreds of pianos. Everybody used to have a piano.
Yeah,
right?
So true.
And
yeah.
everybody used to have a piano, and people would sit around the piano and they would sing together, right? You know, nobody was, you know what I mean? Like the people in the group at the party and the family, people would sit. There'd be the sheet music, and they would all be sitting around and they would sing all those songs. I mean, I'm talking like 100 years ago, whatever. Yeah. And they have actually, you know, measured people's brainwaves while they are kind of creating music together, and something happens, you know. And that's the thing that everybody could do, even if you weren't in a band. You know, you could sit there and kind of, you know, be doing that, and I feel like we do get with our technology, which is, I love technology, and it is, you know, Facebook and whatever are great because I can keep track of people that I wouldn't normally even see. Like I ran into a friend of mine I lived with for years. He's not on social media, and I ran into him and I haven't seen him for a year and a half or talked to him. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of. So I really do appreciate the good uses of technology, but it's very isolating. You know, a lot of these, you know, we're looking at the stuff on our phone and we're alone, or you know, and especially since, like I said, you know, during the pandemic, and then after that, I mean, even people's habits changed, and I don't actually believe people don't go out as much as they did before that.
Oh, I agree with you.
Because all these places like, you know, theaters and places like the West End and like all these places had after that, the audiences didn't just come back in the same, you know, fashion that they did before. So people will still go out, but they have to really want to go out. And you know, just people changed after 2 years. People just changed their habits. They just started doing different things, and they stopped kind of, you know, for various reasons. But they stopped kind of gathering in these groups and going to these things where you're kind of experiencing the same, you know, whether it's music or theater or whatever it is, you know, experiencing the same thing together, which to me is bad, you know, and I feel like you know, we need to have these shared experiences that are positive, you know, when we're in the room with people. I mean, even that event that we had last month at the gas station, we had a bunch of different people doing music and comedy and whatever, and there were, you know, there were not, I don't know how many people there were, not a million people, but it was just, people were like, I mean, very happy to be there.
Oh, I was, that's for sure.
People just, you know, I just feel like people really, and then there were some people like, do you know who Rollo Adler is?
I don't.
He's an old folk music guy and a cartoonist, and he's probably kind of like a pal. You know Bobby Starr. You must know Bobby Starr.
I don't know Bobby.
Okay.
No.
Anyway, old folk guys, but he's in his 70s probably, and doesn't really go out that much. And I messaged him. I said, hey, you know, I invited him. I said, you know, put you on the list. Come on down. And, well, I don't get out much anymore. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to find him a ride, and I'm going to find a friend of his. And I found Kristen Andrews from Ragpickers, who's friends with him. And I said, like, can you get him down here? And you know, and he came, and they one of the other I can't remember that guy's name because I hadn't met him before. One of his other old cronies came, and you know, like to me that's important, you know, to
yeah.
And I mean, he just seemed like really happy to be there, and his, you know, people that knew him were happy to see him, and I was happy to see him, and you know, they were you know, we had all those people doing music and whatever, and you know, they all knew he was old pals with Wally Landreth, and
Yeah.
you know, and to me, like, that's so important, you know, and we can't miss out on that. And it's just so easy to let kind of life and time and whatever just slip
Yeah.
through your fingers.
That was a really special night for me too, when I walked in, like for a couple different reasons, but I walked in, and sometimes you just have a vibe in a room, right? Like all of a sudden I feel like I'm with my people, you know, like other artists. And I looked on the walls, I don't know if you knew this or not, but there was an installment from a local artist.
Okay.
Her name's Adele Rollick. She's a former student of mine.
Okay.
And Adele has a very special place in my heart because when she came into the band program in grade 9, she wasn't like all the other kids who had had previous music experience.
Yeah.
She came into band in grade 9 and said, what instrument do I play? I'm like, oh, you're like brand new, right? But like she was way behind, right? But by the time she graduated, she was a stellar musician. But what's more is she was a beautiful visual artist, and there was all her art on the wall. And it wasn't just there. People were looking at it and pointing at it and talking with one another about it. Like it was being appreciated and brought into their consciousness. And it was, before the show started, I'm looking at what's going on. I'm like, this is awesome. I love this. And of course, you know, I was introduced to some new artists that night, and you know, Martin holds an incredibly special place in my heart because whether he knows it or not, you know, he lit a fire inside of me when I was in grade 11 with his TV show. Martin
is really an amazing human being. He's a great songwriter, and he is nobody is quite like Martin. Nobody performs like Martin. Nobody. At the end of it, he told me after, he said something like, "Oh, I wish I would have tuned my guitar better," which is hilarious because I don't ever think that I've heard him play with a properly tuned guitar,
no.
And it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You know, because he is just so much himself. You know what I mean? He was just always him, and he is just never anything but. And he is, to me, like I don't think he's even capable of lying. To me, he seems like the most honest person
He's so pure. Yeah.
in the world. And yeah, so I've always had a special place in my heart for him, and he's played here, and we didn't do it last year, but we've done a couple of years. We did Sizzle Mania out in the field, and we've got him doing his thing, and I just always loved Martin, and I've really seen him, he struggles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we all do, but he struggles, and he lives with mental illness like I do, and he's had a lot of struggles with that, but he continues to create. He continues to make his music, and he continues to. He's performing now as Martin Howell, because he says Johnny Sizzle's dead. But it doesn't matter, because it's just him, and it just, to me, like to see that just when I was working at the radio station, like I would just see, like, all of a sudden there'd be a new CD. There'd be a new CD from Martin. Oh, look, he put a new CD out. Look at that. And to me, that's wonderful. And he's always writing. And you probably heard at the event, somebody said, play something. I don't remember what they said. Play such and such a song. And he goes, I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off, I'm going to play something new. No, but I just think and Martin, I think, is a great example of, like, somebody who, he's not playing all the time because he's not really easy to pigeonhole. He's not really easy to kind of, this goes exactly with this kind of thing. And of course, he's more interested in kind of creating music than he's not out promoting himself and doing all that stuff, and because he's, that's just not what he's doing. And so, when you do get to hear him, I feel like it's a treat. But I feel like there's lots of people like that who, just for me to be able to kind of to give him a little bit of a window of whatever for him to do his thing is great.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that.
And sometimes, but I love him. And sometimes I'm just like, when you've had parties here, like, come and do a bit of whatever you want to do. And at one point, do you remember when he was in the Casio Corps?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so he came and he did his weird thing, and I remember, like, it was the end of the night, and it just got weirder and weirder and weirder, and there were some people here that were pretty drunk, and I remember one girl, like, I remember looking at her, and she was like, what the fuck am I listening to? Which is amazing.
But here's the thing, everything about it is sincere. Like, he has full heart in absolutely everything he does.
Yeah.
And whether it be like his folk punk thing or his Casio Corps, like he really means it and he loves it. And you gotta appreciate and enjoy that.
And I do love, again, I mean, the honesty. Like, I feel like I haven't, in my life, I haven't always been an honest person, because, you lie to yourself, you try to fit into a thing, you're lying to the person in your relationship with just because you're trying to make that work, or you're trying to, you know what I mean? You're doing all these things to kind of try to fit into the world, but I feel like, for me, my crisis was about, I don't know, 13 years, 13 or 14 years ago, when I, after I closed that place and tried to open another place, and it got shut down, and I had a nervous breakdown and tried to kill myself, ended up in the hospital, and after that I was like, I gotta be honest, I just gotta be honest. I can't, who am I performing these lies for, Who's it for? And it's so liberating, just to be honest, and to be, you're not trying to manage other people. You're not trying to, you can't, you're not trying to manage outcomes, because you can't. All you can do is just be honest and do your thing, and what's going to happen is going to happen. because none of that other stuff, you know, trying to do all this shit, none of that actually ever works anyway. And it's not good for a person's mental health. So I really, really appreciate people that are honest, you know, like Martin, and even people, even if they're a bit prickly, you know, if they're being honest, I mean, you know, they're being honest, and, and there's no, you know, trying to figure out what they mean or trying to, you know, figure out if they're telling you the truth. They just are, and that's a thing that I really appreciate.
Thanks for sharing that.
So you're, where's your, Valiant Shall Rise is, it's where, like, you've posted about it on social media, and I'll maybe post about it again. You had maybe I'll reshare that post, because you had actually done didn't you have like an audio file of it that you had posted, or
I did, because I mean, a lot of band directors, they want to hear what it is it's going to sound like. So I mean, it was computerized and whatnot, but at least it gives them some point of reference.
Yeah. Well, maybe send me that again, and I'll post that after this, because to me, like, well, you I know that we've already had this discussion, but you were apologizing for what you did or didn't do when you were songwriter in residence. Honestly, the only person that I really know wrote a song while they were there was Marcel Desilette, who did his song. He performed his song. Didn't he perform his song?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And so, you know, but really, I mean, you know, he was the only person I think actually did that. But when you had sent me I didn't even know if you sent me a message, or did I just see the post, or when you had written this, you had written this thing, maybe just tagged me in it. I don't think we had a discussion. You had vaguely said you were working on something when I talked to you one time, and then all of a sudden this thing was up, and you said you'd written this song, and it was available for you know, for band directors, and they could you know, donate. The money was going to go to getting this place open and whatever. And like, I remember when I saw that, I was just like, I think I might have even cried. I mean, I remember seeing that, and I was just like, what a great thing that. It's been really hard for me to try to put this thing together, and we've been here for a long time, and I've been really, it's been just like a very challenging thing, because I've put lots of things together in my life, but as I've been getting older, my mental health has been getting worse, and it's been more challenging. This has been a very challenging project for me, and the thing that keeps me going is, it doesn't matter how slow it's going. There are some people that are just, you know, like you and other people that have just been like so supportive, you know, and they're just like there for it, you know, and they just get it, and they just understand what the whole point is, and so that really keeps me going, knowing, you know, that it's a thing that that people want to see, and it's very, you know, often it's very frustrating for me to kind of just the lack of progress, and really mostly I get mad at myself, you know, because I feel like I'm not doing enough or whatever, you know. So to see, and then, you know, the other day there was I got an email saying that there was, you know, somebody had given some money, and then he told me what it was for, and I and then I thought about that again, and I just thought, you know, I just really appreciate, you know, the people that want it to happen, and you know, even though this is not technically, it's not a non-profit. We're doing it as a, you know, just regular for-profit thing for various reasons that I won't go into, but my attitude about the whole thing has been collaborative, and my attitude about the whole thing has been, you know, so I've got a little kind of committee of people helping me with different things, and you know, to have other people kind of shouldering that kind of load with you is, how does anybody do anything by themselves, you know? So as I get I've tried to do lots of things by myself in my life, and I managed to do some things almost by myself. But you know, as I get older, it feels more and more important to you know, to have that kind of community, right? And
Yeah.
have that kind of you know, people wanting the same thing. Like I was saying, you know, people being on the same team, and the people that I know that are on this team are all the people that. A lot of them are people that don't fit on any teams, you know.
Yeah.
Because when I was in school, I hung out with all the different kind of odds and ends kids. Because I wasn't in, you know, the band stuff can be pretty tight. You know, all the band kids are all together. But you know, so I've always appreciated, you know, those people that don't quite, you know, feel like they fit into some group. Because I think, you know, lots of people are sort of independent thinkers, and they think a bit differently, and they, you know, now I know we've got a word for it, neurodiverse.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, I don't know what time it is because my phone's over there, but we've been sitting here talking forever. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you hauling your ass out of Southeast Winnipeg and putting on your best. What is that?
This is the school where I work at.
What is it?
Springfield Collegiate Institute.
Springfield Collegiate Institute.
Yeah.
Very nice. Other high schools are available. Anyway, thank you so much, and thank you so much for listening. Art will save us all.
Art will save us all.
Talk to you again.